I said, why not? And he said, well, Samuel, the cadets of temperance are for good boys. I must have looked sad because he tried to make me feel better. He got down and looked me square in the eye and he said, now don't misunderstand. Samuel, I'm not saying you're a bad boy. You are, but I'm not saying it. As a matter of fact, Samuel, I've known you since you was born. And I've been reading the Bible a lot lately. And if it makes you feel any better, Samuel, I don't think the way you are is your fault. As near as I can tell, Samuel, you are the Antichrist. Which at 9 years old I was pretty damn proud of. Well, I must have looked sad that he wouldn't let me in. Because he took pity on me. And said he would let me in on a trial basis. I would be, in fact, the first temporary member of the Cadets of Temperance. I would be a member on a day-to-day basis, depending on how good I was. But you're not going to believe this. At 9 years old, he made me put my hand on the Bible and swear an oath to God. 9 years old, he made me put my hand on the Bible and swear to God that I wouldn't smoke cigars anymore. At 9 years old, he made me put my hand on the Bible and swear to God I wouldn't drink whiskey liquor anymore. He even made me put my hand on the Bible and swear to God that I wouldn't, and this was confusing, swear to God. I said, hell yes, whatever. So I was in. Now, all I had to do was wait for someone in town to die. Don't laugh, that's the only reason I joined, so I could march in a funeral, wear one of them red scarves, look like the president of France. So I started looking at everybody in town, trying to figure out who my best prospect for a death was. I would knock on doors and take a survey of everybody who lived there. Finally, I decided that old Dr. Norton was the next to die. Well, first off, he was old, which I guess is why they called him Old Dr. Norton. And secondly, he had that smell of death. So, when I realized Dr. Norton was my best chance for a funeral, I went home every night, got on my knees, and prayed to God to kill him. Not more than a week after I started praying for his demise, they announced he was getting better. He'd lived for years. I guess it was God kind of reminding me who was boss. Well, when I heard that Dr. Norton was getting better, I went to the clubhouse and I quit in disgust. And wouldn't you know it, 2 days after I quit, every damned old person in town started dropping dead like flies. Laugh all you want. You're laughing at that poor little boy. Never got to march in the funeral. Shame on you. Although I'll be honest with you, it didn't bother me. Because it had only taken me about a week to steal one of them beautiful red scarves. Well, man, there wasn't anything in that oath about stealing. You know, if you've got a boy of 9 years old with his hand on the Bible, and you're having him swear an oath to God about the things you don't want him to do, and you don't want him to steal, that's a very good time to mention it. They didn't, so I did. I had him on a religious loophole. But it's all right, because I did get to march in a funeral once. As I told you, we was a small town. Now, after the cadets of temperance led the funeral, right behind them came the town orchestra. Nothing fancy, 2, maybe 3 pieces, mostly playing very sad music. Right behind them come the casket. God rest their soul. And right behind the casket came the family. Well, you know families at funerals, screaming and crying and making a general nuisance of themselves. Oh, he's dead, oh my God, he's dead, he's dead. And then right behind the family come what we call in those days mourners. Do you have mourners in Ukraine? Do you know what mourners are?
In the villages.
In the villages. Well, let me tell you, I don't know if it was the same in Ukraine. In America, a mourner is someone that has no relationship at all to the dead person, but is being paid 2 cents to look sad they're dead. Oh no, the more mourners you had, the more important you were. I got hired to be a mourner once for an Irish funeral. I think it was an Irish funeral. It was either an Irish funeral or an Irish wedding. Oh, no, I remember clearly now. There was drinking. There was fighting. There was carousing. There was swearing. It was an Irish funeral. Halfway through the funeral, the widow came back and fired me. Said I was being disrespectful to her dead husband. I explained I was just singing along with the orchestra. But you know, those Irish families are very big. And I was about a quarter mile away. And I guess the song I was hearing was not the song they were playing. And she didn't like anybody in her husband's funeral singing, them bones, them dry bones. So she fired me. Now, I remember clearly, she fired me while we stood right in front of the dry goods store. Well, if you've ever been to Hannibal, you know the dry goods store is exactly one halfway down Main Street. I was hired for 2 cents. 2 pennies to mourn her dead husband. She fired me halfway through, which means she got the benefit of my mourning for everybody in the beginning of town. So I demanded a penny. She said no. I said, give me a penny, you old lady. She said no. And I guess I got all wrought up and excited. And at 9 years old, I said something I shouldn't have said. But I was upset. So I looked at her and I said, oh yeah, you cheap old lady. I hope somebody in your family drops dead. At that, she turned around, looked at her husband in the casket, let out a scream and collapsed on the ground. She was out cold. People tried to wake her up. In fact, there was a line of 20 or 30 people just waiting to try to wake her up. She wasn't liked. Nothing. She was out cold. So finally a couple of people picked her up, carried her home. And they announced the funeral was over. Well, if the funeral was over, that old lady owed me 2 cents.